Hey, this is Gab. Welcome to the Gab 707 channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is going to be a review of the Gopro Hero 7 Black Edition. This has just been out for a few days. I've had it for 3. GoPro was kind enough to send me one of these to give them some feedback and maybe do a review if I felt like it. These are my honest thoughts on this camera. I'm by in no way, sponsored by GoPro or anything. So, yeah, let's dive into it. You guys asked me a lot of questions about the camera, so I'm just going to answer them. I mean, instead of me waffling on for 10 minutes and telling you how cool the camera is, let's see what you think about it. So, actually, before I dive into all the questions, one of the main topics is just going to be, well, is this just as good as RealSteady? And that's a really hard one because RealSteady is a very high-end program with a lot of capabilities, a lot of tuning possibilities. So you can take almost anything, send it through that, and spend the time on it and make it come out beautiful. This, on the other hand, is just a turnkey solution. You just press the button, say, let's stabilize it, and go. And for that, I think this is absolutely killer. Why? Because it will, I think, nail 99% or, even more of your shots just fine. In any movement, for example, here's, for example, some freestyle footage. It just looks great. No problems. It feels very intuitive. It does not feel like the camera's doing weird things. If you do straight lines, it looks absolutely incredible. It looks gorgeous. This looks like a gimbal shot, to be honest. Then there's going to be some places where it has a little bit of limitations, but it says this is just a turnkey solution. Just press it and go. So for that, I'm really, really impressed. So let's get going. Damn, the official footage and specs of that thing are epic. Yes. If you didn't realize, so the old Hero 6 could only do 4K 60, but non-stabilized. You can actually now stabilize 4K 60. This is actually one of my favorite specs on this camera. Useless screen in the back will crack easily on the quad though without protection. Well, unfortunately, yes. It's the same, it's the same housing and camera as the Hero 6, so I'm not expecting any better in durability. But good point. Breaks too easy. Yep, Hero session for life. Well, GoPro stopped doing the session because it cost them too much, I'm assuming. They're just working on this format. And honestly, if this format can deliver this kind of performance, I'm very happy with dealing with this. Well, the Hypersmooth cancel out the little vibrations the quad makes. Yes, this is actually a big deal. Actually, I have an example for you right here. This is comparing the Hero 6 and the Hero 7. I'll just do a screenshot there. If you compare the 6 and the 6 is actually a bit mushy and the 7 is way sharper. And so both stabilization are on the two cameras. But what really surprises me is how sharp the image on the 7 is. Like the color contrast is better, the saturation is a bit better, the colors are nicer. All around, it's just a better image. I'm not sure if this is, in camera or if it's just the stabilization, but the stabilization makes this really, really, really cool. So, for example, in the past, I would use one of these big guys. This is a Shendrone Zikabot. And the reason why I do this, because when you put the camera in here, it isolates the vibrations from the motors from getting to the camera, and then you get super sharp 4K footage. And this is usually what you want for, production shooting, like a lot of what I do. But, with this, it feels like you could put this and on probably any other, camera drone out there, and it's just going to look pretty good. So I'm really blown away by how good this is. Really, this is a big statement for them. Next question. Worth it? Planning to get this if it makes sense versus a discounted 6 or something. Well, I mean, it's worth the same amount as a 6. So, it's $400. This is cheaper even than the 6 was at the start. So it's a cheap camera. It's got super incredible features. I think it's worth it. Anyway, I'll wrap this up at the end again. What does it do? 1080 at like 400 FPS. No, they actually didn't change that. I think the 1080 still goes 120. So the base specs are the same. It's just that you can get stabilization at some of the higher frame rates, which is really cool. Besides the features, is there any noticeable difference in video quality? Yes, as I just noted, yes. It looks way better, just sharper, because like the 6, if you put it there and you just film something stationary, the quality is really good. But as soon as you put it on a quad, all the vibrations and stuff will make it shake a bit and you'll lose some of that sharpness. So the stabilization makes it all come back on the 7. Really surprising. So question, did they increase the sensor size on this one? No, as far as I understand, the only difference between the 6 and the 7 is just the RAM. So it's the same sensor, but they're just pulling more out of it. So the more processing means you can do better stabilization, for example. The 6 only had this EIS stabilization, so I'm assuming it relied on the accelerometer and the gyro to just cancel out vibrations on the thing. But right now on this one, they're doing an extra layer of computing. So they're doing active feature tracking, and then trying to figure out how the camera is moving through the environment, combining with the GPS and everything, and then trying to get the smoothest path through all of that. And that's a big deal. That's not just something you do on such a small device. So I'm really blown away. Just to give you some contrast, like this video here, which you may know, took 6 hours of processing on my laptop. But so my laptop is not the fastest thing out there. It took another 6 hours just to re-export it afterwards, in like 4K with all the effects I put on it. But yeah, it takes a lot of time to post-process video to stabilize something. When you're using a high-end software, for example, like RealSteady, it takes a lot of time because you need to dewarp the image, you need to remove the rolling shutter, and you need to stabilize it, and then you need to output it again. So this camera all does it in the box, which I think is really amazing. FPV Aviator wants a square. We all want a square, but as said, this is what we got. What's that ND filter you have not going? I use these polar filters. You can get these filters here, which you can like that, and you basically clip those onto the front end here. I can maybe do a demonstration for you here. You just remove the front element and clip the new one on. All right. Right now that's an ND16. Depending on the light, you want to put a 16 or an ND8 usually. That's the two ones I use. Did they finally fix the battery problem in sub-zero temperatures? Was there a problem? Anyway. Classic question, how long does it last in snow conditions? Well, I guess, okay, it's the same question again. I mean, batteries do get cold, and when they get cold, you lose, you lose their performance. And so I usually have a lot of these. I tuck a few in my pockets, and then when I need a warm battery, I just plug in a new one in and go with that. And then if it gets too cold, just pop in another one and just keep going. Simple solution. Can I trade my 6 for equal value? I think GoPro have this program where you can trade in and you get $100 off for the next one. Probably works with the 6. I think that's US only too, so maybe it's a thing. Durability, well, I mean, it's like the 6. I don't think there's anything more. So in the promo vids, the stab can look a bit robotic at times. The frame sort of hits an invisible wall and bounces off like an animation of Pong, yeah. Almost like shocks on the car bottoming out. Do you run into this problem with FPV? Yes. So I mean, that's a hard one because so the 6 did this as well. If you did like a smooth turn, you'd think the camera would just follow along. But what it does, it sort of follows a bit, and then it decides, oh wait, you're going too fast, and then sort of, whoa, and it follows. Here's an example of it. What this essentially comes down to is that the cameras need to identify where you're going. And so, I mean, if you're going straight, they're just trying to, minimize out all the small movements and make you go straight. That's sort of, I think, a very common pattern where people want the stabilization to work. But then what if you start doing this and then start gently turning? Well, the 6 sort of didn't do anything, and then suddenly, whoa, just moved over. The 7, in my experience, does this as well, but smaller steps. So it goes slowly, 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 and then sort of does these gentle little kinks over. So it does these bounces. Are they a big deal? I don't think they're a big deal. For example, here's a test that I did where I restabilized a footage that had these little kinks in it. So this is just simple warp stabilizer in Premiere. This is not a super fancy stabilization software. You just use the option, I think it was 10%, and just translations and rotations. And honestly, the footage looks perfect coming out of that. So big thumbs up. I think the big power of this camera is that if you're just doing social media, for example, first of all, you won't even see the kinks, right? So you're going to scale it down. It's going to be buffered through a server. You're not going to have high definition. And in that case, it doesn't really matter. It's not a high quality application. But if you're looking for, that extra little detail, that perfect crisp footage, it's actually there. And that's the whole power of this camera. It's just that it may be separated out with these little kinks. And what you do is just simply restabilize that, and it should be a simple task. So what else do we have? Does it have a live video out? So yeah, it has a HDMI out, which is here on the side. There's a USB port and the HDMI out. You can connect the HDMI to a screen. That works well. You could also plug it into like a broadcasting device, like a Connex or whatnot, and you can broadcast the signal. But the GoPro actually does something better. It does live output. So you could actually, I haven't tested this, but apparently you could use the app to tell the GoPro where to stream. It connects to like a Wi-Fi, and then it will just stream straight to like Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or whatever. I mean, it's something to work on. I haven't tried it, but it looks pretty cool. Let's see what it can do with the bad tune and bent props. It's very impressive. I've flown with, bent motors and, not such a good quad, and it just flies straight. It's perfect. It's really cool. What's the weight? Here's the scale. Marcel Der, it weighs 115 grams. Battery life, battery swap, lens, any filters, improved stability on the quad, flight, any good, low light, motion blur, slow motion stuff, durability. Well, that's a lot of questions, Erlen. Battery life, as far as I see, about the same as the 6. Battery swap, the same as the 6. Lens, the same as the 6. Any filters? Well, the Polar Pro, it's the same thing. Stability, yes, very, very impressive. I mean, I really love it because you can freestyle and it just looks like you just flew that smooth. Good stuff, right? If you're a novice pilot, it's going to make you look better. And if you're a pro pilot, well, it's just going to make you look even better. Low light motion blur. As far as I understand, the camera is not any better at low light. I tried it. Looks about the same as the 6, maybe slightly better, but nothing huge, no huge improvement. Motion blur is going to be the same. That just depends on the shutter speed. How is it going to deal with the stabilization? I think the stabilization probably is going to have an issue with motion blur. Why is that? Well, I mean, I know that from experience. For example, when you're working with Real Steady, if you want the stabilization to have a chance, you need to give it sharp inputs, right? If you have just something with a lot of blur, it doesn't have any, it's harder to detect the scene, it's harder to detect contrasts. And so I'm assuming that if you have motion blur, it's going to be harder to do the stabilization. Now, to which point, I can't tell you right now. I'm going to have to do some more tests. Compare Real Steady and Hypersmooth used for one of those cinematic smooth shots you do so well. Well, that's probably going to come at some later time. I'm sort of stuck in Montreal these days, and I don't have anything very cinematic to film. But if you keep up to date with my Instagram channels or Facebook page, there's links in the description here. You can see how I put the camera through its paces as we go along. Does it come with a gap smoothness filter? Maybe. Well, if you're doing smooth turns, it's going to be super buttery. That's all the gap 707 you need. But yeah, it's going to have these little kinks that we mentioned earlier on if you go too smooth. Does the props in view affect the stabilization? It seems like the Rotor Riot guys had some funky results. Well, I don't know. I tried it with the props in view and with the props out of view, and I had the same kinks, nothing very major. So I don't think it affects it. So with that, I'll wrap it up with some of my own thoughts on this. I think this is a super impressive camera, just for the fact that, if you've tried to render, for example, Real Steady, if you've tried to work with it, you'll know that it's very hard to use. It takes there's a learning curve to it, and then once you do get it to work, stuff like this takes 6 hours to export, and that's just the stabilization. Then you need to export it to file. So there's just no way around it. Stabilization is hard. and for GoPro to just cram it into this tiny box is really amazing. So I think everyone should get one of these cameras. Yes. I think FPV for me is about the footage. I love expressing myself and I love having quality footage. So I think this should be on your quad. That being said, if you're just being adventurous and you just like smashing things around, well, maybe you should consider something else. This is not that rugged and it's going to cost you $400 if you break it every time. So, you know, you got to find what's best for you. I'd like to say maybe, you know, the other things about the camera, like the user interface, are really cool. The time warp is super nice. Honestly, you can walk around and just hyperlapse and not worry about it, and it comes back super nice. It's just a very impressive camera. So with that, you know, if you want to, this was just me playing around with it for 3 days. If you want to have a more detailed analysis, you know, just keep on looking at my my Instagram pages or my Facebook page. I'll be posting up some of my thoughts as I go along a bit later. But yeah, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. See you next time.